I am firelotusthewitch, and yeah, so today it's going to be an updated version on videos that I've done before with working with your ancestors. I do want to apologize in advance though, because obviously my neighbors decide now to cut their grass. So if you hear that in the background, I apologize for that. But yeah, let's get into it. All right, so working with your ancestors, is it easy? Is it hard? Yes and no. The number one thing you need to do is start what I started, which began this journey of working with my ancestors, and it is known as the 30-day spiritual challenge. Basically, the only thing you're doing is taking 5 to 10 minutes of every day. I do mine in the morning time when I drink coffee, and you literally just sit down in isolation or solitude and just talk to your ancestors like they're standing right in front of us, right? For one, the reason this is because they're more than likely around you and they're wanting to help you. Not all ancestors are going to want to help you, and that's perfectly okay. But they basically need to know that you're ready to receive and to actually start working with them. So basically, once you start doing this over the course of 30 days, and hopefully once you start it, you're not going to stop, what's going to wind up happening is you're teaching both your ancestors and you are learning how to actually communicate with each other. And the more you do it, the stronger that connection becomes. Now, with me, it started out with random scents or random smells that I associated heavily with certain ancestors. And it did take me, one or two of them took me, like, I actually had to ask around in my family. And then all of a sudden, it they could pop up in your dreams. What I'm trying to say is it depends on you. It could be you ask a question and you get in a car or you walk into a store and there's a song playing that reminds you of your ancestors, or a specific ancestor. Now, when I mean ancestors as well, I don't necessarily just mean blood relatives, anybody that you considered family while they were living. With that being said, one of the most questions that I get about working with your ancestors is, well, what happens if I meet like what I call an OG ancestor, like one from like 400, 500, 1,000 years ago? For one, you're not going to have to worry about communication because I personally believe in the universal language. What I mean by that is when a spirit crosses over, they're not just like limited to speaking English or Spanish or, understand what I'm saying. So they will be able to communicate with you. I've also realized in my own personal practice, and I think I've been doing this now for 4 years with working with my ancestors, 4 or 5. It takes time to actually get to that part of your ancestry. Normally, you start working with the ones that you knew and or were closer to you, but it depends on them. Now, I have had one or two older ancestors step forward as well. Now, what are the benefits of working with your ancestors? Now, this goes is on fringe, so we're going to say magical theory because some witches do not believe this, but I do because I've experienced it. We can also tap into some of that ancient knowledge, as in you'll wind up, it's going to be one of those moments where either A, it's like you just remembered something that you already knew, but you really shouldn't have known it, um, and or it's going to be things that randomly come to you. Now, another cool way to connect to your ancestors is with cooking. I actually do a mini series online with cooking with your ancestors on TikTok, where when I cook certain meals, I will be talking to my ancestors while I'm doing it. And if you have any family recipes that have been passed down through generations, um, I encourage you to cook those. Now, another question, and while you're cooking them, think about moments that you've had with those people and or think about the stories that you've been told about those people. They're around you and they're wanting to connect with you. Now, the next obvious question that I get, okay, what happens if I'm adopted and I know absolutely nothing about my family? That is okay too. In time, you will learn and build that relationship. Now, I know because I personally have it too. There are multiple ancestors that I want absolutely nothing to do with, and that's perfectly okay. They will not come forward. The other ones will prevent them from coming forward. And always know that with most of your ancestors, they're not going to put you into a situation or want you to do something that you morally or ethically would not do. Now, another one that I always get is revenerating. Basically, fixing and not erasing, but actually full on acknowledging how fucked up our ancestors were in some certain situations, depending on your family, and basically making sure you yourself do not carry that on. How do I do this? This also goes into family generations and family curses. Now, there are some actual straight up curses, but to me, in a modern sense of what a family or a generational curse is, it's drinking, it's addiction, it's mental health issues, it's actual health issues that are genetically passed down. It is certain learned or taught behavior that doesn't stop with you, and if you continue that, you'll pass it on to your kids, right? So, what's the easiest way to stop that? You break the link in the chain. If you break one link of a chain, the entire chain just breaks. That's one way, straight up. Um, Now, with that as well, when I say your ancestors are all around you, I don't literally mean they just like follow us around, but they can pop in whenever they want. But with that, you can set boundaries with them. Like, for any reason, if I need privacy, I'll straight up say, privacy, and boom. I would also start researching a spirit bottle. Now, be careful with the spirit bottle or ancestor bottle because there are some recipes out there that actually call for their graveyard dirt to actually bind their spirit to the bottle. You don't necessarily want to do that, and if you do, by all means, you do you. But try to create a home and or a actual. In certain traditions, it's known as a magical fetish. And or it could be also in Southern Conjure and other practices as well. They have things as like mojo bags or Gigi bags. Mojo bags is what I use, and that's the term that I use because I'm a Southern Conjure practitioner. Um, and I also think I said the other one wrong. I think it's actually Gree. But some of those can also be used to home spirits and or ancestors. But basically, you're going to want to make an ancestor house. Now, you can use a jar. One of my good friends actually used a lantern, like a cheap lantern they got at like Dollar General, and kind of reconstructed it and added things. How the way that you would think of like creating a pendulum jar, you can totally do something like that. Or you can do a birdhouse. What I mean is you just need a structure. You don't have to do this, but it's cool and it adds the next level to it because you can more personalize it. Now, I actually do have an ancestor jar, but I tweaked it and created my own recipe. So that ancestor jar or that spirit jar can also be where they're going to kind of like live when they're like around you, if you will. Basically, the main things that need to go into it is depending on what your intent is. Primarily, though, focus on herbs and crystals that strengthen spirit communication. Um, so yeah, check into that. Again, y'all know me. I love giving advice, but I also like to make sure y'all have homework to take home and do in your own time because you can't have witchcraft without research. It's as boring as it is. That's just how it is. Now the cool thing is now this is not necessarily going to happen with everybody, and I have to stress this enough. Do not get discouraged. Okay, these are things that are going to take repetitiveness, doing them every day and creating small little daily rituals. Now, again, you don't have to do it in the morning time. You can do it while you're on the way to work, while you're on the way home from work. And you necessarily do not verbally have to speak it out either. You can have a full-on conversation. Now, with this, another thing that I would ask you to start incorporating into your practice because it can help all other areas of it is something that is known as bioregalism. Bioregalism is the specific study of the region around your home and or work life where you travel, specifically studying the wildlife through all the seasons. Why is this? So if there is a tree, if I have a tree of robins that they nest in that tree, if I ask the ancestors something and then right after that I see a robin, it may not be that sign, right? But if you know how the animals act, if you know what birds you normally have in your yard, what you don't, what you're used to seeing and what you're not used to seeing, and or how they're acting, if it's abnormal and normal, it's going to help you determine and decipher if that is a sign. Now, mostly I tell people that when it does come to a spiritual sign from an ancestor or deity even, you're going to feel it as well. It's going to be one of those aha moments. What I mean by the aha moment is like, remember that first time, have you ever had an experience where you saw something like just natural, like the Grand Canyon or mountains in the distance with fog? Like that moment where you just stop and you have to take it in. It's kind of going to be like that moment. And or you'll have a certain sense, just kind of say you're really, really in a stressful situation and you don't know how things are going to go, and then all of a sudden you see a butterfly pop out of nowhere, and in that instant everything just melts away. That would be considered a sign that everything is going to be okay. Now with that, another thing to incorporate into bioregalism, and I've also incorporated it into my practice, but for one, you're also getting closer to the land because you're actually observing it. You're learning. This can even help you with weather patterns around your property. Always listen to the professionals when it comes to weather, though. But it can also help you feel closer. It can almost, I'm trying to think of the right way to say this. So another way that I like to say is other things that you can do to connect with your ancestors is things that they actually did. Now, with that being said, working with your ancestors is not like working with your deities because they're your ancestors, they're your elders. They're going to want you to do the best that you can do. And they have a very, very funny sense of humor when it comes to that as well. I asked them that I wanted to be closer to them, and my sink in the kitchen stopped working to where I had to wash and dry dishes in the bathtub, which is literally what they used to do, with a bucket of water and everything like that. So I literally relived, and are still reliving in some areas, that. So basically doing things that they would do, whether that's gardening, whether that's fishing, whether that's reading a book, journaling. These things right here can bring you closer to them. You can set up an altar for them. Well, what if I don't have any pictures of them? That's perfectly okay too. Over time, as you're building this connection, you'll be able to learn things that they like and don't like and may want and may not want. There's even ancestor money that you can check out and check into and do your research too. Mine love coffee, obviously. They love biscuits, sweets, and a lot of the times, a lot of things that they craved in their living life, they'll also like to crave afterwards. Sorry, there's something in my eye. But in general, it's going to take time and repetitiveness. But I personally have gotten to the point to where I have channeled my partner's ancestors. I'm talking, these are people that he never got to meet. But with retelling those stories and retelling the information that I got from his father, my, I almost said stepfather. No. My father-in-law, he verified that, yeah, no, they're 100% accurate. And the first time I did that, it literally made this man turn ghost white. And he's a devout Christian that calls me his little pagan. So, but it shocked him, and it made him question like what he believed, because the thing that I said, there was no way in hell I should have even known it. No picture. It was literally just an idea that they had, and they used to talk about that never actually got fulfilled. And when I stepped on this property for the first time, that is the only thing that I kept seeing in my head. So it's really cool, and like I said, they can be. It's amazing just to be able to feel connected. And when it comes with this whole thing that we've been hearing, where like well, my family doesn't have any witches in it. Most people really do. What I mean by that is folk magic, and most practitioners, especially like Appalachian folk magic, they didn't consider what they do witchcraft or magic. It was a way of living. It was a gift from God, if you will. So that's what I mean by that aspect. So fall down the rabbit hole of folk practices, because that means a lot of us did have actual people that practice magic, just not in the definition and the aesthetic look that we have now. So always remember that. And like I always used to say, and like I still say a lot of the times, especially if I'm doing certain workings and, some hot energy, if you will, energy that I don't like comes along, I will repeat and I'll tell myself, my ancestors are behind me, my ancestors are walking beside me, and my ancestors are walking in front of me. So we are constantly surrounded by that. So yeah, wow, that was actually shorter than I thought it would. All right. Well, I guess that's going to be it. Let me know if you would like me to make more videos on this. Drop any comments that you have or drop any questions that you have in the comments below. And I'll try to make a video on it as well. But yeah, and the ancestor altar, it doesn't have to be really, it doesn't even need to look like an altar if you don't want it to. If you do have pictures, you can literally just set pictures up, and you can either get real candles or get a fake LED candle. And every time that you would like to communicate with them, like if you're in the broom closet or you're not out, just say that it's a memorial table, and then with you specifically, put the fake candles or real candles on there, and just state in your head or send it to your ancestors that anytime you light those candles, it's a way for you to feel connected with them. There's also Samhain is coming up, so look into the silent supper, or I think it's called a dummy supper. I love the idea of that. I've done it before. And yeah, so the next time you cook, especially if it's something that your ancestors would love, try to, and when I say, like give them a plate, I don't mean you necessarily have to fix them a full plate. Like I understand some people struggle when it comes to food, especially in the day and age that we're in now. So it can literally be just a couple of like little spoonfuls of everything, and that's perfectly okay as well. So yeah, but just always know that if you do discard your food outside, make sure that the food that you're discarding outside, for one, if you're in that area where like bears and wildlife, make sure you don't summon a bear. But make sure it's safe for the environment or the animals around it. So like chocolate, most chocolate is bad for a lot of animals, including cats and dogs. So don't really throw that out there. And if you do, bury it to a point to where, like, obviously not the wrapping and shit like that, just the food. You can bury it, you can burn it. So many things you can do with that. But yeah, until then, thank you so much. And like I always say at the end of my videos, if at any point in time you have a magical question and you don't know who to ask, you can email me with the email linked below. You can also, through that email, book a reading with me. I do oracle cards. You can also book any type of magical services that I offer, and or even a magical consultation for a custom spell. Custom spell just being, depending on the situation, is depending on how the spell, what it's for, and how it's going to work is constructed for you. So yeah, also with that, there's going to be a link tree listed below. I have another new podcast episode coming out, which it'll probably be out by the time you see this, so go check that out. It's a two-parter. I will also be having another one coming out as well, so I'm getting episodes rolling out. And we're on YouTube. Yeah, all the other links. My wish list is in there. I have a magical library that's in there that basically it's all the books that I have in my collection. That way you can find them online if you would like to add them to yours. And everything else, if you'd like to support me in any way, everything that you need to know is in the links. And if you're following me on this account, if you have a TikTok or an Instagram or a Facebook, why are you not following them? It only makes sense. But yeah, let me know if you'd like to know anything else. And until then, I'll talk to y'all later.